psychologists have started to look into, like you could call it troll behavior. I called it troll demon behavior because the people who are on social media platforms aren't exactly humans. They're human-machine hybrids, right? As soon as we're interacting with a huge social network, we have a reach that far extends our biological reach. So we're machine-human hybrids on social media. And those machine-human hybrids are very bizarre creatures. We don't know what to make of them. But we do know something about the human beings behind the more troublemaking posters. So psychologists have identified a constellation of traits: manipulativeness, Machiavellianism, narcissism, and that's the sort of desire for attention without merit; psychopathy, that's predatory parasitism; and sadism, which is added relatively recently, which is positive delight in the unnecessary suffering of others. And those four characteristics make a set, you could say, called the dark tetrad. And it would be associated with antisocial behavior, criminal behavior, exploitation of others, including on the sexual front, not least on the sexual front. Now, people who are characterized by that constellation make up about 3% of the population stably across cultures and time. And that's because there's a niche for predatory parasites, like a permanent biological niche. Now, the problem is so they're 3%. It's not everyone, it's a tiny minority. And they don't tend to be very successful, although they're not entirely unsuccessful, right? So they propagate. The problem is that any social enterprise of any sort can be and often will be destabilized by the dark tetrad types, despite their minority status. And so then when we set up a communicative system like Twitter, which is basically a cooperative system, the parasites, the predatory parasites, can invade it and demolish it. And they can do the same thing to whole societies. You know, the number of people who organized the Russian Revolution after the Tsarist period was infinitesimally small. A tiny minority of people can cause a tremendous amount of trouble. I talked to Andy No, for example, about Antifa, which is not exactly an organization. It's more like a loose quasi-terrorist cell phenomena. There's no centralized bureaucracy. There's no full-time employees. And so it's easy even to dismiss its existence. And I had talked to a lot of Democrats who had done exactly that. So I asked Andy at one point how many Antifa organizations he thought were extant in the United States. And he said about 40. And I said, well, how many full-time equivalent employees, so to speak, do they have? And he thought, well, maybe 20 each. It's 800 people. It's 1 in 400,000. That's all. So in a city of 1 million people, you're going to have like 2 people like that. But the tariff, so that's like no people, right? It's like, well, they don't exist. 2 in 1 million, who cares? There's the rub. 2 people in 1 million who are hell-bent on causing nothing but trouble, partly because they like trouble, partly because they like hurting people. They can cause an awful lot of trouble. And societies forever have wrestled with the problem of the free riders or the predatory parasites. And then that brings up the terrible spectrum of censorship. Like you said, well, nobody wants to go on Twitter if it's completely overrun by child porn distributing, hyper-violent predators. And fair enough. So that has to be controlled. But then the line of control becomes extraordinarily difficult to establish, right? And that's a universal human problem of regulation of social environments, not just a problem that's emerged in social media. We don't know how to regulate that in social media. So, in normal life, if you meet someone like that, there are control mechanisms. They tend to get beat up, for example. They tend to get suppressed physically. But online, zero. There's almost zero ways of controlling.